The first time Marcus Kellan saw the orc woman plow, he was standing at the edge of his own field with dirt under his fingernails and sweat already cooling on his back, watching the competition assemble at dawn with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from 9 straight victories. The annual plowing match was the pride of Harrow's Cross, a farming community where reputation mattered more than gold, and a man's worth was measured in straight furrows and honest labor. And Marcus had owned that reputation for nearly a decade. Then she arrived, driving an ox cart loaded with a massive iron plow that looked like it had been forged by someone who understood both metal and earth in ways the local smiths never could, and every head in the gathering turned to stare. She was tall, easily matching Marcus's own height of 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to carry a full grain sack in each hand and arms corded with muscle that spoke of years working land that did not give up its bounty easily. Her skin was the deep green of summer leaves after rain, and small tusks curved up from her lower jaw, white against her lips. Black hair hung in a thick braid down her back, tied with leather cord, and her ears tapered to slight points that twitched when the whispers started rippling through the crowd. She wore a simple work tunic and canvas trousers, both weathered and patched, and she moved with the economical grace of someone who never wasted motion, because every bit of energy counted when you were trying to survive. Marcus felt his stomach tighten, not with fear but with something more complicated. He had fought orcs during his 3 years in the border militia, back when he was young and stupid and thought the world divided neatly into human and monster. He had learned differently, slowly and painfully, but the learning had cost him friends who never made it home and nightmares that still woke him some mornings. Seeing an orc woman here, in the heart of peaceful farmland, registering for a plowing competition like she had every right to stand beside human farmers and test her skill against theirs, made something twist inside his chest that he could not quite name. "That is bold," said Thomas Winters, the miller's son, standing close enough that Marcus could smell the beer already on his breath despite the early hour. "Coming here like she belongs." Marcus said nothing, watching as the orc woman finished unhitching her ox, a massive beast with horns that swept wide and eyes that showed white around the edges when men came too close. The match overseer, old Gerald Thorne, was walking toward her with his registry book, his face carefully neutral in the way of a man trying not to start trouble before he understood what kind of trouble he was dealing with. "Name?" Gerald asked, his voice carrying in the morning stillness. "Nora," the orc woman said, and her voice was deeper than a human woman's but clear, with an accent that softened some consonants and sharpened others. "Nora of the Red Hill clan. You understand the rules of the match." Gerald's tone was formal, distant. "You plow the assigned strip, judges measure for straightness, depth, and completeness. No magic, no tricks, just you, your plow, and your team." "I understand." Nora met his eyes steadily, and Marcus saw no defiance there, just calm certainty. "I came to compete, not to cause trouble." "Well then." Gerald wrote her name with careful precision. "You will take strip 7 between Marcus Kellan and Peter Voss. Sunrise start, same as everyone." The murmuring grew louder after that, spreading through the gathered farmers and their families like wind through wheat. Marcus heard fragments, some curious, many hostile. He understood the hostility even if he no longer shared it. 3 years ago, an orc raiding party had hit a farmstead 20 miles south, burning the fields and driving off livestock. 2 years before that, a human militia had attacked an orc settlement in retaliation for something Marcus never learned the full truth of. The cycle went back generations, feeding on itself, and most people in Harrow's Cross had lost someone to it at one time or another. But Marcus also remembered sitting in a burned-out border fort, bleeding from a sword cut across his ribs, while an orc warrior who could have finished him off instead tossed him a water skin and disappeared into the smoke. He remembered the face, not so different from Nora's, and the choice that warrior had made to show mercy when mercy was not required or expected. That memory had complicated everything Marcus thought he knew about the world and his place in it. The competition began with the ringing of the church bell, 6 clear notes that sent the competitors to their strips. Marcus took his position, his own plow already waiting, freshly sharpened and oiled, his horse team stamping and ready. To his left, Peter Voss was already starting, his horses leaning into their harnesses. To his right, Nora was adjusting her ox's yoke with hands that moved with practiced efficiency. Marcus set his blade depth, checked his line, and started. Plowing was meditation and music combined, a rhythm that got into a man's bones and stayed there. The bite of the blade into earth, the horse's steady pull, the long strips of dark soil rolling away from the plowshare in perfect curls. Marcus had learned this work from his father, who learned it from his father before him, and there was pride in the continuity, in being part of something larger than himself. He focused on his line, keeping it straight as a surveyor's mark, feeling the slight variations in soil density through the plow handles, adjusting constantly for grade and stones and the 100 small things that separated amateur work from mastery. He finished his strip in good time, better than most years, and stepped back to let the judges measure while he watered his horses. Only then did he look over at Nora's strip, and what he saw made his breath catch. She was done, her furrows lying dark and perfect in the morning light, and they were better than his. Not by much, but enough. Her lines were fractionally straighter, her depth more consistent, her turns at each end cleaner. She stood beside her ox, one hand on the beast's shoulder, watching the judges with an expression that revealed nothing. The crowd was quiet now, the hostility shading into confusion and reluctant respect. Whatever they had expected from the orc woman, it was not this level of skill. The judges conferred, measuring with strings and stakes, checking depths with marked rods, walking the length of each strip with the careful attention of men who took their responsibility seriously. Finally, Gerald Thorne announced the results, his voice carrying across the field. Third place, Peter Voss. Second place, Marcus Kellan. He paused, and Marcus could see the old man choosing his words carefully. First place, Nora of Redhill. The silence that followed was complete and uncomfortable. Marcus saw Nora's shoulders tighten, waiting for the protest, the anger, the rejection. He saw her hand grip the ox's harness a little tighter, ready to leave quickly if she had to. Marcus surprised himself by stepping forward and offering his hand. "Well plowed," he said simply. "I have been winning this match for 9 years. It is about time someone beat me." Nora stared at him, and he saw shock flicker across her features, followed by something that might have been hope before she shuddered it away. She took his hand, her grip strong and calloused, her skin warm despite the morning chill. "You plow well," she said quietly. "I expected the competition to be stronger with such a reputation." Marcus laughed, surprised to find he meant it. "It was strong enough. You were just stronger." Around them, the crowd's mood shifted slightly, not to acceptance but to tolerance, which was perhaps the most that could be expected. The judges handed Nora her ribbon, a strip of blue cloth that she folded carefully and tucked into her belt. The prize money, 3 silver crowns, went into a leather pouch that looked light enough to worry about. The competition dispersed slowly, families heading back to their farms with the day's work still waiting. Marcus lingered, tending to his horses and coiling his plow lines, and he was aware of Nora doing the same nearby, her movements economical and efficient. He found himself watching her, not with the old wariness but with curiosity. "Where is your farm?" he asked, because the silence felt wrong and because he genuinely wanted to know. Nora glanced at him, clearly weighing whether to answer. "North Ridge," she said finally. "Beyond the old stone bridge, I have 40 acres, mostly rough ground." "That is hard land," Marcus said, meaning it. He knew the North Ridge, had hunted there as a boy. The soil was thin and rocky, the kind of land that broke backs and spirits in equal measure. "You work it alone?" "I do now." Something moved behind her eyes, old pain carefully controlled. "My clan moved west last spring. I chose to stay." Marcus understood what that meant. Orcs lived in tight clan groups, bound by blood and shared survival. For Nora to stay behind meant she had been cast out or had chosen exile, and either option came with a cost he could barely imagine. "That must be difficult," he said, and knew the words were inadequate. "It is what I chose." Nora finished hitching her ox and picked up the plow handles. "Thank you for your hand. I did not expect it." She was leaving, and Marcus felt an odd reluctance to let her go. "If you need anything," he heard himself say. "My farm is 3 miles south, the stone house with the red barn. People here know me. If you have trouble, come find me." Nora studied him for a long moment, and Marcus had the sense of being measured and assessed in ways he did not fully understand. "Why would you help me?" she asked bluntly. "You are human. I am orc. That is enough reason for most people to want me gone." "I fought in the border wars," Marcus said quietly. "I saw enough hate and killing to last a lifetime. I came back here to grow things instead of destroying them. If you are trying to do the same, I figure that matters more than the color of your skin." Something shifted in Nora's expression, a careful guarding giving way to something more open. "I will remember," she said. Then she clicked her tongue to her ox and headed out, the big plow bouncing along behind her cart. Marcus watched her go, feeling the ghost of her handshake still warm in his palm, and wondered what exactly he had just started. The weeks that followed brought the hard work of late spring, when every farmer in Harrow's Cross raced to get crops in the ground before the weather turned. Marcus planted his fields with wheat and barley, rotating his strips the way his father had taught him, building the soil year by year. He repaired fences and cleared drainage ditches, and did the 1,000 small tasks that farming demanded. And he tried not to think too much about the orc woman on the North Ridge. But he found himself glancing that direction when he worked the fields nearest his northern boundary, wondering how she was managing alone. 40 acres of rough ground was brutal work for one person, even one as strong and skilled as Nora clearly was. He imagined her breaking new furrows in rocky soil, wrestling stones out of the earth, working from sunrise to dark with no one to share the load or the small victories. 6 weeks after the plowing match, Marcus was mending fence line when he heard a crash from the woods bordering his property. He grabbed the axe he kept nearby and moved toward the sound, instincts from his militia days bringing his body low and quiet. What he found made him stop short. Nora was crouched beside a fallen tree, her face twisted with pain, her left leg pinned beneath a massive branch. Her ox stood nearby, still hitched to the tree trunk, clearly having been in the process of dragging it when something went wrong. "Nora," Marcus said, dropping the axe and moving to her side. "What happened?" "The chain snapped," she said through gritted teeth, and Marcus could hear the effort it took to keep her voice steady. "Branch fell wrong. I cannot move it." Marcus assessed quickly. The branch was oak, thick as his thigh and pinning her leg from mid-thigh to knee. Her face was gray-green beneath the natural color and sweat stood on her forehead. "How long have you been here?" "Hour, maybe more." Nora closed her eyes briefly. "I tried to shift it, no leverage, Do not try again, you could break something. Marcus moved to the branch, testing its weight. Too heavy to lift alone, but maybe with the ox's help. I am going to tie a line to this and use your ox to pull it off. It is going to hurt when the pressure releases. Can you stay still? Do it, Nora said flatly. Marcus worked quickly, using the snap chain to loop the branch and then hitching it to the ox's harness. He spoke softly to the big animal, gentling it, then urged it forward. The branch shifted, lifted, rolled away. Nora made a sound low in her throat but did not cry out. Marcus was beside her immediately, carefully checking her leg. The canvas of her trousers was torn and he could see the angry bruising already spreading across her thigh, but nothing seemed broken. Can you move your toes? Nora flexed her foot, wincing. Yes. Then probably nothing is broken, but you cannot walk on this. I am going to carry you to my house. The healer lives nearby. She can check you properly. I will be fine, Nora said, trying to stand. Her leg buckled immediately, and only Marcus's quick grab kept her from falling. She leaned against him, breathing hard, and he could feel her trembling. I do not need a healer. You are coming to my house, Marcus said, in the tone that used to make junior soldiers fall in line. The only question is whether you walk with my help or I carry you. Choose. Nora looked at him, and for a moment he thought she would refuse out of sheer stubbornness. Then she nodded once, sharply. I will take your help. They made it to his farm slowly, Nora leaning heavily on Marcus's shoulder, her jaw tight with pain. Her ox followed behind, the broken chain dragging. Marcus got her settled in his kitchen, her leg propped on a chair, and sent his hired boy running for old Ruth, the healer who had delivered half the babies in Harrow's cross and set more broken bones than the local surgeon. Ruth arrived within the hour, carrying her worn leather bag and a no-nonsense expression that Marcus remembered from his own childhood mishaps. She examined Nora's leg with hands that were gentle but thorough, asking questions in a tone that expected honest answers. Deep bruising, probably muscle damage, Ruth said finally. Nothing broken, but you are not walking on this for at least a week, maybe 2. You need to rest it, keep it elevated, let it heal properly. I have work, Nora said flatly. I cannot rest for 2 weeks. Then you will cripple yourself permanently, Ruth said, unmoved. I have seen this before. You push too hard too soon, the muscle tears worse, and next thing you know you are limping for the rest of your life. Your choice. Nora stared at the old woman, clearly warring with herself. Marcus saw the calculation in her eyes, weighing impossible options. If she did not work, her crops would suffer. If she worked, she risked permanent injury. Either way, she lost. She can stay here, Marcus heard himself say. I have a spare room. She can rest properly, and I will see to her farm while she heals. Both women turned to stare at him. Ruth's expression was calculating, shrewd. Nora's was pure shock. You cannot, Nora said. You do not even know me, and your neighbors will talk. Let them talk, Marcus said. I made you an offer after the plowing match. This is me making good on it. He looked at Ruth. Can she be moved again, or should she stay here tonight at least? She should stay, Ruth said slowly. Moving that leg more today will not help matters. She packed her supplies with efficient movements, but her eyes were sharp on Marcus. You are taking on complications, boy. You know that. I know it, Marcus said quietly. After Ruth left, promising to return in a few days to check on Nora's progress, Marcus heated water for tea and found bread and cheese in his larder. He set the food in front of Nora, who had not spoken since his offer, and poured tea into 2 mugs. Why are you doing this? Nora asked finally. Her voice was carefully neutral, but Marcus could hear the confusion underneath. You owe me nothing. Marcus sat down across from her, considering his answer. When I was in the militia, I got wounded during a skirmish near the border. sword cut across my ribs. I was lying in the dirt, waiting for someone to finish me, and an orc warrior showed up. He could have killed me easily. Instead, he tossed me water and left. I never knew his name or why he did it. But I am alive because he chose mercy over hate. He took a sip of tea, the memory sharp and clear. I came home from the war tired of fighting, tired of the old feuds. I wanted to grow things, build things, make something that mattered. When I saw you at the plowing match, working land alone because your clan cast you out, I thought maybe you were trying to do the same thing. So yes, I am helping you. Maybe it is paying forward what that warrior did for me. Maybe I just think the world needs more people choosing kindness over old hate. Nora was silent for a long time, staring into her tea. When she spoke, her voice was rough. My clan left because I would not raid human settlements. They said I was weak, that I had forgotten our honor. But I had seen too many deaths, too much loss on both sides. I wanted to try something different to see if an orc could live peacefully, farm land honestly, without the constant war. She looked up at Marcus, and her eyes were bright. Everyone said it was impossible, that humans would never accept me, that I would fail and starve and prove my clan right. You have not failed, Marcus said. You beat me by a furrow, remember. And from what I saw of your work at the match, you know farming better than most humans born to it. A small smile flickered across Nora's face, the first he had seen. I still cannot believe you shook my hand. That meant more than the ribbon or the prize money. Well, I had to do something, Marcus said lightly. You made me look bad in front of everyone I have known since childhood. My reputation may never recover. Nora laughed, a short surprised sound that transformed her face. I am sorry for damaging your pride. I will find some way to live with it, Marcus said solemnly, and was rewarded with another laugh. They talked through the afternoon, carefully at first and then with growing ease. Marcus learned that Nora had been farming since she was young, that her mother had taught her to read the soil, and weather the way human mothers taught their daughters to read books. Nora learned that Marcus had inherited his farm from his father 5 years ago, that he lived alone because no woman in Harrow's Cross quite knew what to make of a former soldier who came back changed from the quiet boy who left. As evening approached, Marcus showed Nora to the spare room, small but clean, with a bed his mother had made up years ago and a window that looked out over the fields. He brought her fresh water and extra blankets and left her to rest while he went to do the evening chores. Later, lying in his own bed with the house quiet around him, Marcus thought about the strange turn his life had taken. 3 months ago, he had been a farmer with a comfortable routine and a certain reputation. Now he had an orc woman sleeping in his spare room, and he had promised to work her land along with his own while she healed. His neighbors would talk, some with curiosity, others with suspicion or anger. But when he remembered Nora's face when he offered her his hand at the match, the shock and hope flickering in her eyes, he knew he had made the right choice. The war had taken enough from both their peoples. If he could do something, however small, to build a different future, he would do it. The next morning, Marcus woke at dawn and started breakfast, making enough for 2. Nora appeared in the kitchen doorway, moving carefully, her injured leg stiff but bearing some weight. You should be resting, Marcus said, gesturing to the table. I can sit at a table as easily as in bed, Nora said, settling into a chair. And I am not an invalid. Marcus served eggs and bread, and they ate in companionable silence. Afterward, while Nora settled in the main room with her leg propped and a book from Marcus's small collection in her hands, he headed out to work. He started with his own morning chores, feeding livestock and checking on fields, then hitched his wagon and drove north to Nora's farm. What he found there impressed and sobered him in equal measure. The farmhouse was small but well-built stone and timber construction that spoke of careful work. The barn was in good repair, with a solid roof and well-hung doors. The fields showed evidence of brutal labor, 40 acres partially cleared of stones and broken into rough furrows, maybe 20 acres planted with what looked like barley and root vegetables. But the work was incomplete, and Marcus could see where projects had been abandoned halfway, not from laziness but from simple lack of time and extra hands. He spent the day working, finishing what Nora had started. He cleared stones from a half-plowed field, repaired a section of fence that had sagged, weeded the planted acres. The labor was hard but satisfying, and Marcus found himself admiring Nora's skill even in small details. Her furrows were straighter than they looked, designed to channel water efficiently. Her fence posts were set deep and true. She knew what she was doing, and she had been doing it entirely alone. He returned to his farm as the sun was setting, muscles aching pleasantly, and found Nora sitting on his porch. She looked up as he approached, her expression carefully neutral. "How bad is it?" she asked. "Not bad," Marcus said honestly. "You have done good work, considering you have been doing it alone. I got some weeding done, finished clearing the north field. Tomorrow I will start on the drainage ditches if the weather holds." Nora closed her eyes briefly. "You should not be doing this. It is too much." "It is what neighbors do," Marcus said simply. He sat down on the porch step, looking out over his own fields. "Besides, I am curious to see if we can get you through this season successfully. If an orc farmer can make it in Harrow's Cross, that would be something worth doing. And if I cannot?" Nora's voice was soft. "If the land is too hard, or the neighbors turn hostile, or I simply do not have enough gold to buy seed for next year." "Then we will figure something out," Marcus said. "But I do not think you will fail. You are too stubborn." Nora laughed quietly. "Stubborn is good for some things, but I am learning it is not always enough." Over the following days, a rhythm developed. Marcus would wake early, help Nora with morning tasks she could manage sitting down, things like mending tools or repairing harness leather, then spend the day working both farms. Nora's leg healed slowly but steadily, and she grew stronger each day. In the evenings, they would eat together and talk, sharing stories of their different lives. Marcus learned about orc culture, how clans worked, the intricate system of honor and obligation that governed orc society. Nora learned about human farming traditions, the festivals and markets that structured the agricultural year, the complicated politics of a small farming community where everyone knew everyone else's business. They also learned about each other in smaller, more personal ways. Marcus discovered that Nora had a dry sense of humor that emerged when she felt comfortable, that she loved thunderstorms and hated the taste of apples. Nora discovered that Marcus sang while he worked, old ballads he had learned from his mother, and that he was unexpectedly good at cooking despite living alone. 2 weeks after the accident, old Ruth returned to check on Nora's leg. She examined it carefully, had Nora walk around the house, and finally nodded with satisfaction. "You have healed well," Ruth said. "The muscle is still tender, so do not do anything stupid like trying to lift full grain sacks. But you can return to normal work within reason." After Ruth left, Nora turned to Marcus. "I should return to my farm. You have done more than enough for me." Marcus felt an odd twist in his chest at the thought of Nora leaving. Over the past 2 weeks, he had grown accustomed to her presence in his house, the sound of her voice in the morning, the comfortable silence of shared meals. "You could stay a bit longer," he heard himself say. "Make sure the leg is truly strong before you return to full work." Nora studied him with those dark eyes, and Marcus had the uncomfortable sense that she saw more than he wanted to reveal. "I do not want to impose," she said carefully. "You are not imposing," Marcus said. "I have liked having you here." Something shifted in Nora's expression, a careful guarding giving way to something softer. "I have liked being here," she admitted. "This has been the first time since my clan left that I have not felt alone." The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable, and Marcus felt something click into place in his chest that had been shifting and settling for weeks. He cared about this orc woman, cared about her welfare and her dreams, and whether she succeeded in building a life for herself. It was more than neighborly concern, more than paying forward an old debt. It was something deeper and more complicated, and it both excited and frightened him. "Stay," he said simply. "As long as you want." Nora's hand found his, warm and strong, and she squeezed once. "I will stay," she said quietly. The summer deepened, bringing long days of work and the slow satisfaction of watching crops grow. Marcus and Nora fell into a pattern of working both farms together, sharing the labor and the small triumphs. They learned each other's rhythms in the field, how to coordinate without speaking, when to push and when to rest. The people of Harrow's Cross noticed, of course. Small farming communities noticed everything. Marcus felt the weight of their attention when he went to town for supplies, the careful questions, the curious looks. Some people, like Thomas Winters, were openly hostile, muttering about orcs and proper behavior. Others, like old Ruth and Gerald Thorne, simply watched with thoughtful expressions and kept their opinions to themselves. Marcus did not care. He was happier than he had been in years, and he was not going to apologize for that. One evening in midsummer, Marcus and Nora were sitting on his porch watching fireflies dance over the fields. The air was warm and heavy with the scent of growing wheat, and the sun was setting in bands of gold and pink. "I never thought this could work," Nora said quietly. "When I chose to stay, to try farming alone, part of me believed my clan was right, that I was being foolish, that humans would never accept me. And now," Marcus asked, "now I think maybe it is possible after all." Nora turned to look at him, and in the fading light her eyes were soft. "Because of you. You showed me kindness when you had no reason to, and you kept showing it, day after day. You made me believe I could belong here." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "You do belong here. You are one of the best farmers in Harrow's Cross. That ribbon you won was not charity, it was earned skill." "It is more than farming," Nora said. "You made me feel like I matter, like I am not just an orc trying to survive in human lands, but a person worth knowing." She hesitated, and Marcus saw uncertainty flicker across her face. "I am not good at this, at talking about feelings. Orcs do not do this easily, but I need you to know that these months with you have been the happiest of my life." Marcus reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I am not good at this either," he admitted. "I came back from the war not sure what I wanted or who I was anymore. I thought I would just farm and live quietly, and that would be enough. But then you showed up at the plowing match, proud and skilled and refusing to apologize for existing, and something woke up in me that I thought had died in the war." "What woke up?" Nora asked softly. "Hope," Marcus said simply. "Hope that the world could be different than what we inherited, that people could choose to build instead of destroy, to connect instead of divide." He took a breath, feeling like he was standing on the edge of something vast. "Hope that I could maybe love someone and be loved back, even if it was complicated and difficult and nothing like what people expected." Nora's hand tightened on his, and when she spoke her voice was rough with emotion. "Are you saying you love me?" "Yes," Marcus said, and it felt like the easiest and hardest word he had ever spoken. "I love you, Nora. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you sing to your ox when you think no one is listening. I love how you read the land like poetry and how you laugh when something genuinely surprises you. I love who you are and who I am when I am with you." Tears were streaming down Nora's face, catching the last light. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could, did not think I should, but I do. I love you so much it scares me." Marcus stood, drawing Nora up with him, and kissed her. Her lips were warm and tasted of the tea they had shared at dinner, and when her arms came around him, he felt like he had finally come home from a war that had lasted far too long. They stood together on the porch as the last light faded and the stars came out, holding each other and making quiet promises about a future they would build together. But happiness, Marcus knew from hard experience, was never simple or safe. A week after their first kiss, trouble arrived. It came in the form of 5 men on horseback, riding into Marcus's farmyard in the middle of the afternoon. Marcus recognized them immediately. Thomas Winters, along with his brothers and 2 cousins, all of them young and angry and looking for an excuse to cause problems. Marcus was in the barn when they arrived, cleaning tack. Nora was in the house preparing vegetables for dinner. He walked out to meet them, wiping his hands on a rag, keeping his body language calm and non-threatening. "Thomas," he said evenly, "what brings you here?" "You know what brings us," Thomas said, swinging down from his horse. The others followed, spreading out in a loose semicircle. "We have been hearing stories, Marcus, stories about you and that orc." "Nora has a name," Marcus said quietly, "and what goes on at my farm is my business, not yours." "It is our business when you bring an orc into our community," one of the brothers said, a young man named James with red hair and freckles. "Orcs killed our uncle 3 years ago. You remember that?" "I remember," Marcus said. "And I remember the raid that started that cycle, when human militia burned an orc village. I remember a lot of things, James. The question is whether we keep living in that past or try to build something different." "Different." Thomas's voice was thick with contempt. "You think sleeping with a monster is building something?" Marcus felt anger flare hot in his chest, but he kept his voice level. "I think Nora is a person trying to live peacefully and honestly. She has not harmed anyone. She works harder than most of you combined. She has earned her place here." "She is an orc," Thomas said flatly. "That is all that matters, and we want her gone." "That is not your decision to make," Marcus said, and let some steel enter his voice. "This is my land. Nora is here because I invited her. If you have a problem with that, you can leave." "Or what?" James stepped forward, his hand on his belt knife. "You going to fight all of us, Marcus, for an orc?" "If I have to," Marcus said, and meant it. His militia training was coming back, the careful assessment of threats, the positioning of his body between the men and the house where Nora waited. 5 against 1 were bad odds, but he had faced worse in the war. The tension stretched taut, violence hanging in the air like a physical thing. Then Nora stepped out of the house and every eye turned to her. She had armed herself, Marcus saw. A wood axe in her hands, held with the easy competence of someone who knew how to use it. She walked forward until she stood beside Marcus, and he could feel the solid strength of her presence. "You want me gone," Nora said, her voice carrying across the yard. "Then you will have to go through Marcus first and then through me. I am not leaving without a fight." "You see," Thomas said to his companions, "this is what happens. She brings violence and conflict. That is what orcs do." "No," Marcus said sharply. "You brought conflict when you rode onto my land uninvited and made threats. Nora is defending herself, same as any of you would do. The difference is she has done nothing wrong except exist in a way that makes you uncomfortable." "It is unnatural," one of the cousins muttered. "Human and orc together. It is wrong." "It is not wrong," Marcus said, and he let all his conviction pour into the words. "It is two people choosing to build something together instead of tearing each other apart. That is the most natural thing in the world if you are brave enough to see it." He took a breath, looking at each of the men in turn. "I know you have lost people to this conflict, so have I, so has Nora. But killing each other forever will not bring them back or make the pain stop. At some point someone has to choose different. Nora chose to farm instead of raid. I chose to help instead of hate. If that makes you angry, I am sorry. But we are not leaving and we are not apologizing." The silence that followed was long and uncomfortable. Marcus could see the calculation on Thomas's face, weighing anger against risk. 5 men could certainly overwhelm Marcus and Nora, but not without cost, and in a community like Harrow's Cross, violence had consequences beyond the immediate moment. Finally, Thomas spat in the dirt and swung back onto his horse. "This is not over," he said. "People will not forget what you are doing here." "Good," Marcus said. "I hope they do not forget. I hope they see that it is possible to choose differently, and maybe some of them will be brave enough to follow." The men rode out, their horses kicking up dust, and Marcus stood watching them go until they disappeared over the rise. Only then did he let out the breath he had been holding. Nora lowered the axe, her hands shaking slightly. "That could have gone badly," she said. "It could have," Marcus agreed. He turned to her, seeing the fear and determination mixed on her face. "Are you all right?" "I am all right," Nora said. "But Marcus, this is what I feared. The hatred, the rejection. It will not stop with Thomas. There will be others." "Probably," Marcus said. "But there will also be people who see what we are doing and understand it, who are tired of the old feuds and want something better. We just have to be stubborn enough to outlast the haters." Nora laughed shakily. "Stubborn? Yes, I can do that." They went inside, and Marcus barred the door, more from instinct than real belief that Thomas would return. That night, Nora slept in Marcus's bed, curled against him, and he held her and promised silently that he would protect this thing they were building, no matter what it cost. The next day, Marcus hitched his wagon and drove into Harrow's Cross. He was done hiding or being subtle about his relationship with Nora. If people were going to talk, he would give them something worth talking about. He went to the general store first, buying supplies he did not strictly need, making conversation with the shopkeeper and anyone else who came in. He mentioned Nora casually, talked about the work on her farm, praised her skill. Some people listened with interest, others with obvious disapproval, but Marcus did not waver. From there, he went to the tavern, where farmers gathered in the afternoon to trade news and gossip. He bought a round of beer and talked openly about his relationship with Nora, about the plowing match she had won, about his plans to help her succeed. "You are being a fool," one old farmer said, shaking his head. "Orcs and humans were not meant to mix." "Why not?" Marcus asked reasonably. "We breathe the same air, work the same land, want the same things. Seems to me the only thing preventing us from mixing is old habits and older hate." "It is against nature," another man said. "No," Marcus said firmly. "War is against nature. Hate is against nature. What is natural is finding someone who makes you want to be better, who works beside you and dreams with you and laughs at your jokes. That is what Nora and I have. If you cannot see that, I am sorry for you." Not everyone was hostile. Gerald Thorne, the match overseer, approached Marcus as he was leaving the tavern. "You have courage, boy," the old man said quietly, "stirring things up like this, but courage is not always enough." "What else do I need?" Marcus asked. "Time," Gerald said, "and proof. Show people that an orc can be a good neighbor, a contributing member of the community. Win them over slowly. You cannot change generations of hate overnight, but you might be able to chip away at it, piece by piece." Marcus took the advice to heart. Over the following weeks, he and Nora made themselves visible in the community. They went to market days together, selling Nora's vegetables alongside Marcus's grain. The produce was good, better than good, and people who might have avoided an orc farmer bought from Nora because her tomatoes were the ripest and her turnips the sweetest. Nora joined the women's weaving circle, bringing her own work and sitting quietly while the others talked. She did not push, did not demand acceptance, just showed up week after week until some of the women started talking to her, asking about her techniques, sharing patterns. Marcus continued to work both farms, and slowly the visible success of Nora's acres began to speak louder than words. Her barley was tall and healthy, her root vegetables thriving. People could see that she was not a monster or a savage, but a skilled farmer making the most of difficult land. Not everyone softened. Thomas Winters and his brothers remained openly hostile, and there were others who would cross the street rather than greet Nora. But there were also small victories. Old Ruth stopped by Nora's farm one day with a basket of herb starts, said only that every good farm needed a proper herb garden, and left before Nora could thank her properly. A neighboring farmer, Peter Voss, who had placed third in the plowing match, asked Nora for advice on improving his drainage and followed her suggestions. The summer turned to autumn, and the harvest came. Marcus and Nora worked side by side, bringing in wheat and barley, digging turnips and potatoes, storing away the fruits of their labor. It was good harvest, better than Marcus had managed alone, and Nora's acres yielded enough to give her a cushion against the winter. On the last day of harvest, with the barns full and the fields empty, Marcus and Nora collapsed together in the farmhouse kitchen, exhausted and satisfied. Marcus opened a bottle of wine he had been saving, and they toasted the season and each other. "We did it," Nora said, wonder in her voice. "A full season from plowing to harvest, and we succeeded." "You succeeded," Marcus corrected. "You proved you belong here, proved you can make a life in Harrow's cross. I just helped." "You did more than help," Nora said. She set down her wine cup and took Marcus's hands in hers. "You changed everything for me. Before I met you, I was alone and uncertain, trying to prove something to people who did not care. But you cared. You saw me, not just as an orc or a farmer, but as a person worth knowing and loving. That changed me, Marcus. It made me brave enough to believe I could belong somewhere." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "You made me brave too," he said. "Brave enough to stand up for what matters, to risk comfort and reputation for something real. Before you, I was going through the motions, farming because it was what I knew, not because it brought me joy. But working beside you, building something together, that has given my life meaning again." Nora leaned forward and kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. "I want to spend my life with you," she said when they parted. "I want to wake up beside you every morning and work beside you every day and fall asleep in your arms every night. I want to build a future together, whatever that looks like." "That sounds like a proposal," Marcus said, smiling. "It is," Nora said simply. "Will you marry me, Marcus Kellan?" Marcus felt joy burst through him like sunlight through clouds. "Yes," he said, pulling her into his arms. "Yes, I will marry you. I want nothing more than to spend my life loving you and being loved by you." They held each other in the kitchen of the farmhouse Marcus had inherited from his father, and Marcus thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. A year ago, he had been a lonely farmer with a comfortable routine. Now he was planning to marry an orc woman, to build a life that would challenge everything his community thought they knew about love and belonging. It would not be easy. There would be more hostility, more challenges, more moments when they had to choose courage over comfort. But Marcus was not afraid anymore. He had found something worth fighting for, something worth building, and he would not let go. The wedding was planned for the first day of winter, giving them time to prepare and giving the community time to adjust to the idea. Marcus announced their engagement at the tavern, simple and direct, and watched the reactions ripple through the room. Some people congratulated him, genuine warmth in their voices. Others turned away, disapproval clear on their faces. Most simply watched and waited, unsure what to think. Nora received similar mixed reactions when she announced the engagement at the weaving circle. A few women embraced her, saying they were happy for her. Others packed up their work and left. But some stayed, continuing to weave and talk as if nothing had changed, and that felt like victory enough. The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy with preparation. Marcus and Nora decided to hold the ceremony at his farm, which had become their shared home over the months. They would exchange vows in the barn, decorated for the occasion, with whoever chose to attend as witness. They sent word to Nora's clan, not expecting anyone to come but wanting them to know. To their surprise, a rider arrived a week before the wedding with a message. Nora's mother would attend, along with 2 of her siblings. The clan did not approve, the message said, but family was family, and they would bear witness. Marcus sent word to his own relatives, the few cousins and aunts scattered across the region. Most did not respond, but his youngest cousin, a girl named Emma who had always been curious and bold, wrote back saying she would not miss it for the world. The day before the wedding, Nora's family arrived. Marcus had been nervous about meeting them, unsure what to expect. Nora's mother, Grinned, was an older version of Nora herself, tall and strong with silver threading through her black hair. Her tusks were more prominent, and her eyes were sharp and assessing. Nora's siblings, a brother and sister named Korg and Mira, were equally imposing, both warriors by the look of them. Grinned looked around Marcus's farm with a critical eye, taking in the well-maintained buildings, the healthy livestock, the signs of prosperity and care. Then she turned that gaze on Marcus himself, studying him with an intensity that made him want to fidget like a child. "So you are the human who stole my daughter's heart," Grinned said finally. "I did not steal it," Marcus said, finding his voice. "She gave it to me, and I gave her mine in return." "And you understand what you are asking her to do?" Grinned's voice was hard. "To tie her life to a human, to live in a human community, to give up her clan and her people." "She gave those up before she met me," Marcus said quietly. "She chose this life because she wanted peace, wanted to build instead of fight. I am just lucky enough that she chose to build with me." Grinned stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once sharply. "You have courage, I will give you that. Whether you have wisdom remains to be seen. But my daughter loves you, and I have learned to trust her judgment, even when it leads her down difficult paths." She stepped forward and gripped Marcus's shoulder with surprising gentleness. "Treat her well, human. Give her the life she deserves. And if you ever betray her, there is no place in this world where you can hide from me." "I would never betray her," Marcus said, meeting Grinned's eyes steadily. "I love her more than anything in this world." "Good," Grinned said. Then, to Marcus's surprise, she smiled slightly. "Welcome to the family, Marcus Kellan. May your stubbornness match my daughter's. You will need it." That evening, Marcus's cousin Emma arrived, along with Gerald Thorne and his wife, and old Ruth carrying a basket covered with cloth. Other families from Harrow's cross began appearing, some out of genuine support, others out of curiosity, but all willing to bear witness. By sunset, perhaps 30 people had gathered at Marcus's farm, a mix of humans and orcs, neighbors and family, the uncertain beginning of something new. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, with frost glittering on the fields and the sky pale blue and infinite. Marcus dressed in his best clothes, a simple but well-made suit that had belonged to his father. Nora wore a dress she had made herself, deep green wool embroidered with gold thread, beautiful and practical in equal measure. They met in the barn, which had been transformed by willing hands. Hay bales lined the walls, covered with blankets and cloth. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting warm light. Wildflowers, the last of the season, had been gathered in baskets and placed around the space. Marcus and Nora stood facing each other, with Gerald Thorne serving as officiant. The old man cleared his throat and addressed the gathered witnesses. "We are here today to join Marcus Kellan and Nora of Red Hill in marriage," he said, his voice carrying in the barn. "This is an unusual union, one that will challenge many of our assumptions and beliefs. But at its heart, it is simply two people choosing to commit their lives to each other, to build a future together, to face whatever comes side by side. That is the foundation of any good marriage, regardless of who is doing the marrying." He turned to Marcus. "Do you, Marcus, take Nora as your wife to love and honor, to work beside and stand beside in prosperity and hardship for as long as you both live?" "I do," Marcus said, his voice clear and steady. Gerald turned to Nora. "Do you, Nora, take Marcus as your husband to love and honor, to work beside and stand beside in prosperity and hardship for as long as you both live?" "I do," Nora said, and her voice was strong and sure. "Then by the power vested in me by the community of Harrow's Cross, I declare you husband and wife. May your life together be blessed." Marcus and Nora kissed, and the barn erupted in applause and cheers. It was not universal. Not everyone present was entirely comfortable with what they had just witnessed, but it was real and honest and full of hope. The celebration that followed was simple but joyful. Old Ruth revealed her basket contained a wedding cake, slightly lopsided but delicious. Someone had brought beer, and someone else had brought a fiddle, and soon music was filling the barn. Humans and orcs mingled cautiously at first, then with growing ease as the beer flowed and the music played. Marcus danced with Nora, holding her close, feeling like his heart might burst with happiness. "We did it," he said softly. "We actually did it." "We did," Nora agreed, "and this is just the beginning." As the celebration continued around them, Marcus looked out over the gathered people, human and orc together, laughing and talking and sharing food and drink. It was not perfect, and it would not magically erase generations of conflict. But it was a start, a crack in the old hatreds, a glimpse of what could be possible if enough people were brave enough to choose differently. The winter that followed was hard but happy. Marcus and Nora settled into married life, learning each other's rhythms, navigating the small adjustments and compromises that any new marriage required. They planned for spring planting, dreamed about expanding the farm, talked about the future. Not everything was easy. There were still people in Harrow's Cross who refused to accept their marriage, who crossed the street to avoid them or muttered insults when they passed. Thomas Winters remained openly hostile, though he had not tried anything physical since that confrontation in Marcus's farmyard. But there were also victories, small and large. More farmers asked Nora for advice, valuing her expertise. The weaving circle accepted her fully, and she became known for her beautiful patterns. When spring came, 3 more orc families arrived in Harrow's Cross, saying they had heard of Nora's success and wanted to try farming peacefully themselves. Marcus helped them find land and get started, paying forward the kindness he had shown Nora. On the anniversary of the plowing match, Marcus and Nora returned to the competition field. This time, they plowed side by side, working matching strips, their furrows running parallel and true. When the judging came, they tied for first place, and Gerald Thorne awarded them a single ribbon to share. 9 years running he won the plowing match, Gerald said, his voice carrying across the field. The orc woman beat him by a furrow. He just grinned. And now they plow together, equal and matched. That is the future we are building here in Harrow's Cross, not forgetting the past, but choosing to build something better. The crowd applauded, louder and more unified than it had been a year ago. Marcus looked at Nora, saw her eyes shining with tears and pride, and he understood that they had done something remarkable. They had not changed the world, not yet, but they had changed their small corner of it. They had proven that love was stronger than hate, that connection was more powerful than division, that two people from different worlds could build a life together if they were brave enough to try. That night, lying in bed with Nora curled against him, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that first moment when she had beaten him at the plowing match, to the long months of building trust and friendship, to the love that had grown between them despite every obstacle, it had been the hardest and most worthwhile thing he had ever done. "What are you thinking?" Nora asked sleepily. "I am thinking about that orc warrior who gave me water during the war," Marcus said. "How he chose mercy when he could have chosen killing. How that one choice changed everything for me, led me to you, to this life." "You think he knew," Nora asked, "what his choice would lead to?" "No," Marcus said. "I think he just did what felt right in the moment without knowing where it would lead. That is all any of us can do, really. Make the choice that feels right, that moves toward kindness instead of cruelty, and trust that it matters." "It matters," Nora said, pressing a kiss to his chest. "What we built here matters, not just for us but for everyone who comes after. We proved it is possible." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. And when morning came they woke together and went out to face another day of work and love, and the slow building of a future worth having. Years passed, measured in seasons and harvests, in fields planted and reaped, in small victories and challenges overcome. Marcus and Nora's farm prospered, becoming known throughout the region for the quality of their crops and the fairness of their trade. The orc families that had followed Nora to Harrow's Cross built their own successful farms, and slowly, grudgingly, the human community accepted them. Marcus and Nora had children, 2 daughters and a son, each carrying both human and orc features in unique combinations. The children grew up bilingual and bicultural, learning both human and orc traditions, and they became bridges between the two communities in ways their parents had only begun. The old hatreds did not disappear overnight. There were still incidents, still people who refused to accept the changing world. But each year brought progress, small but real. Intermarriage between humans and orcs became more common. Mixed children attended school alongside human and orc children. Festivals began blending traditions from both cultures. Thomas Winters eventually left Harrow's Cross, unable to accept the changes, but his brothers stayed and slowly softened their views. One of them even married an orc woman, to everyone's surprise, and admitted to Marcus years later that seeing his marriage to Nora had planted a seed that took time to grow. Gerald Thorne lived long enough to see 3 more generations of mixed marriages, and to judge 15 more plowing matches where humans and orcs competed equally. On his deathbed, he told Marcus that the greatest achievement of his life was watching Harrow's Cross transform from a place of suspicion and division to a true community. Old Ruth trained Nora's eldest daughter in healing arts, passing on knowledge that blended human and orc traditions into something new and powerful. The girl became the most sought-after healer in 3 counties, known for her skill and her compassion. On the 20th anniversary of that first plowing match, the community of Harrow's Cross held a celebration. Marcus and Nora stood together, older now but still strong, still working their land and living their love openly. They were surrounded by family, by friends both human and orc, by the community they had helped build through sheer stubborn courage and unwavering commitment to each other. Someone asked Marcus to tell the story again, of how he and Nora met, and he obliged, recounting the plowing match where she beat him by a furrow after 9 straight victories. "I just grinned," Marcus said, smiling at the memory. "Because I knew I was watching something special, something that mattered more than any ribbon or prize. I was watching someone refuse to be diminished by other people's expectations, someone brave enough to demand her place in the world. And I was smart enough to recognize that if I wanted to be part of something meaningful, something that mattered, I needed to stand beside her and support her rather than compete against her." "He was also stubborn enough to keep showing up," Nora added, laughter in her voice. "Even when I tried to push him away, even when it would have been easier to give up, he kept choosing kindness and connection. That stubbornness saved my life and gave me a family and a future I never thought possible." Their children and grandchildren listened, hearing the story they had heard many times before but never tired of, because it was their origin story, the foundation of everything their family had become. As the celebration continued into the evening, Marcus and Nora slipped away, walking together through fields they had worked for decades, land they had transformed through labor and love. The sun was setting, painting the sky in familiar colors, and the air smelled of growing things and possibility. "Do you have any regrets?" Marcus asked, taking Nora's hand. "None," Nora said immediately. "This life, this family, this community we built together, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. You gave me that, Marcus, you and your stubborn, generous heart." "We gave it to each other," Marcus corrected. "Neither of us could have done this alone. We needed each other's strength and courage and love to build something this good." They stood together in the twilight, two people who had chosen each other against every expectation and obstacle, who had built a life of meaning and joy through sheer determination and unwavering commitment. Around them, the community they had helped transform celebrated, human and orc together, proof that old hatreds could be overcome and new futures built if enough people were brave enough to try. Marcus kissed his wife, the orc woman who had beaten him at plowing all those years ago, and he grinned, just as he had that first day, because he knew he was the luckiest man alive. Not because life had been easy, but because he had found someone worth facing the difficulties with, someone who made every challenge worth overcoming, and every victory sweeter for being shared. They walked home together as the stars came out, hand in hand, their life together a testament to the power of love to bridge any divide and build something beautiful from the most unlikely beginnings. And in the years that followed, their story would be told and retold, inspiring others to choose courage over fear, connection over division, love over hate, one stubborn, generous choice at a time, building a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared, and where two people from different worlds could plow side by side and call it home.